Evening, everybody, and welcome to Just a Little Bit, episode 17. Borrowing... sorry, excuse me.
You good, girl?
Yeah, let me start over again. Evening, everybody, and welcome to Just a Little Bit, episode 17, To Borrow a Barrow. I'm your DM, Evan, and thank you for joining us as we continue our adventures in Obra. For tonight's adventure, we rejoin our party in the woods just outside of the small mountain town of Saren. Not too long ago, our party was set the task of discovering if the merchant organization, the Regaliant Atelier, was in Truehome for honest business or something more sinister. What they uncovered is their contact at the Regaliant Atelier, Lord Meadowsweet of Rion, was actually a pink pearlescent dragon, a member of a race of dragons created from stolen human emotions during a war now over 500 years past. They were lucky to escape his clutches after being teleported into his lair, but sadly realized they were very far from home when they landed in the mountain town of Saren. Saren wasn't the refuge they hoped it would be, as the streets were already filled with the Pearlescent's minions, the Yuan-ti. Their humanity and emotions, taken by a process that transforms them into their new form, they had compelled the citizens of Saren to teach them the vital skills to pretend to be human. Yet, not everybody in Saren was on board with this process, and so our party found allies in the Tavern Keeper Rees and his friends and family. So now the party is on its way on a moonlight run to escape Saren, save those citizens who want to be free from Yuan-ti control, and try to find a path home deep within the abandoned Fey Barrow. Will they see Truehome again, and what surprises await them within? Let's find out.
So what you're saying is Marjo's just overtime for this whole thing.
Probably.
I just want to take a second to say how upset I am that you didn't describe it as like a chilly mountain town so that we could all do the Blair St. Clair again.
I hate you all so much.
You're lucky I was going to make a DM while you DM and you're the DM joke, but I chose not to.
It's not my fault that I had something stuck in my throat, okay? You want to get up here and do this?
Sure, so change sheets.
Alright, so settling in for tonight. The typical sounds of a forest night slowly filter back into your perceptions as the rush of battle fades from your mind and the adrenaline cools in your veins. The brisk mountain air rushes down through the trees, cooling the sweat from your brow with a chilly tingle as the faint hum of insects and the distant cry of birds start up again. Turning from the recently defeated Yuan-ti pitmaster and abomination, you see that Rees and Aldwin, your friends from Saren, have dispatched the remaining Yuan-ti purebloods. With that threat managed, you look back towards the Barrow, and what you see takes your breath away for a moment. Beyond the small stand of trees the Yuan-ti used to ambush you, the Barrow is now lit by the two moons hanging in the sky, and a sea of flowers greet you. A riot of colors seems to break into different geometric patterns at every second as the wind sends ripples across the clearing below, and a large, well-lit opening in the Barrow is surrounded by thick green vines with pale white flowers that sparkle with the twinkle of fairy light. What would you like to do?
I'm gonna turn to Valen and be like, "Ooh, I mean, that's pretty, but is that what it's supposed to look like?"
Can I go check out the flowers and vines and make sure there's nothing like weird going on?
Yeah, so if you want to give me a nature check as you get closer.
As Valen's doing this, Twid has Lucretia out, and Twid is like the pitmaster and the other Yuan-ti just blowing a few more holes in them to make sure they don't get back up.
Creepy, but okay.
I got an 18 on nature.
So 18 on nature, you look around, and the flowers around you are ones that you would expect to live in like mountainous regions. Like nothing stands out as being unusual or dangerous. I think the only thing that draws your attention is that there are regular places where there's a bright red flower that acts as the border between different flowers, almost as though someone has purposely planted them in a way to break up the flower fields, even though they're sort of like natural in their appearance. And that stands out to you as like this was sort of purposeful. Someone shepherded these flowers in this direction. As for the vines that hang over, you think to yourself, well, that's weird. They don't normally glow or anything like that. And as you get a little bit closer, you see several of the little motes of light jump away from the vines and come to swirl around you slowly in a circle.
Well, I mean, this is different, but like, I don't, and I kind of like try to poke at the lights. I'm like, they don't seem harmful.
Anytime you go to poke at one of them, it just sort of flutters out of your reach and then like will flutter back as your hand is removed.
I will say this is what the Fae like to do.
Evan, what kind of role would it be to see if I've seen these motes before, like heard of what they could be?
You know, if you want to
Joey
give me
has
a
a thought, but
history check,
Thorn doesn't.
They like you, Valen.
10.
No.
You kind of look at them and you're like, well, you've heard of things like fireflies. You've heard of various other like elemental varieties of fireflies, like things that have been touched by magic and by the architects. So you're thinking this could be some other form of like naturally occurring elemental or bug life.
23.
23. You are feeling a lot more confident that these might indeed be very minor elementals. And they're, you know that there's a number of variety of minor elementals that are drawn naturally to either more powerful versions of themselves or to like powerful nature magic. So like one day this might become a big giant like light elemental, but for right now, this is how they start as teeny tiny little motes of magic.
I feel like you all watch as Valen tries to like get them to move closer to like nestle into their hair. Be like, come on, come live here.
They circle around your head a bit, but none of them are seemed willing to land.
Thorn is very briefly going to go check in with the ones who slew the minor Yuan-ti and make sure that they're all okay.
As you get closer, you see Alwyn has a longsword out and is sort of like looking around a little bit, whereas Reese has a bow drawn sort of down by his side. And he goes, "Do you think that's all of them?"
Potentially. It depends on whether or not the nest is inside. And Thorn will point to the shaman-looking one. That one, among my people, is referred to as a pitmaster.
I've heard about that one. Working at the Sylvan Grove, there was a lot of gossip at the tables. Good news is I think there's only one of them.
Hopeful spellcasters of these variety can be tricky, but it does not bode well for this being the only ones.
Fair. I left the others back with Carrie. She'll know what to do if anything comes up.
Although, in all fairness, the little ones are easily dispatched.
And he looks down at the purebloods, and you can see for a minute he gets a little like his face gets just that little flush of going pale, and you get to feel like he's probably not super comfortable or familiar with slaying other humanoids.
Yeah. Thorn will sort of give him a knowing look and go, "The first few are always the hardest."
I suppose that's true. I haven't done something like this in a very, very long time.
We are a people eternally at war.
I feel like Calvin just kind of awkwardly barges in and just goes, "So, like, do we want Valen to go in first in case there's, like, Fae inside, or, like, should Porkroll go first in case there's more snakes?"
I have an alternative option. And Thorn is going to walk up to basically as close as they can get to the door without, like, standing in it. Like, they want to be off to the side. And if I sort of peer my head in, can I get a good view down the tunnel?
You can't get a very good view down the tunnel because as you look at it, you realize that it's a like rough stone ramp that leads down, and it's nice and worn into a groove in the middle, and you can see that there's kind of mosses growing along the sides and on the walls. That dips down and then sort of evens out, but by the time it gets towards where you see like there's a little bit of a glow of light at the end of the tunnel's kind of dipped back up out of your view.
And you see Thorn is going to sheath their swords and pull their bow and an arrow that you've never seen before, because instead of having feathers for the fletchings, the fletchings are little jagged icicles. He goes, "If I can get closer, I may be able to use this." It turns into, I'm trying to think of the exact terminology, a minor ice elemental through whose eyes I can see. We use it for scouting purposes.
Well, that seems handy.
And Thorn is going to stealth down the path a little bit just to see, like,
Give me a
is
stealth.
there a flatter portion? Is there a long portion? Like, what are we getting into?
And Flip is going to send a little bardic inspiration after you, which is a D8.
Oh, inspiration, not guidance. Heard.
Yeah, so it lasts for 10 minutes whenever you want to use it.
And can I use it after I... Sorry, I've not had inspiration in forever. Can I use it after I
Yes.
roll? I'm going to use it now.
You can use it after you roll, but before I tell you the results. Once I tell you the results, it's locked in.
That's a little bit better. 24.
Yeah, so you duck down and sort of step into where the more of the shadowed part of the path is, and as you are slipping in, those little motes are following you for a minute, and then they sort of like pull back towards the vines as though you've gone outside of the area they feel like comfortable moving to, sort of reluctantly start to trickle back towards the vines and the rest of the party. And now, clothed more in darkness, you feel fairly confident that you've slipped out of most people's sight. Stepping down the tunnel and looking through it, it takes you just a little bit. You only have to go like 30 feet in before the tunnel sort of lowers down enough that you can now see up the arch, and you can see that there's a faint light sort of another 60 feet down. And beyond it, you can see that there's like thick vegetation.
And remind me, because Thorn would know how this works, but Joey doesn't. When I shoot the arrow and it appears, it can't move, right?
It can move.
Oh, fabulous.
It's just very slow. It moves 10 feet per round.
Okay, so Thorn is going to draw their bow and shoot the arrow like... You said the light was 60 feet away?
Yep.
Like 55 feet down the tunnel.
So you want to end right before the light then?
I'm aiming for like as close to the roof as I can get. Like, I don't want the arrow to be seen. Like, I just want to... Yeah.
Okay.
As close as I get to the portal without actually going through the door.
Give me an attack roll then, if you're trying to be like that precise about how you drop the arrow.
Good roll. 25.
25, yeah. You pull the arrow back, you release it. As you do, it arcs gently into the air, and it's pretty silent on its frozen fletchings. Just before it hits, you see the arrow itself sort of fall apart into all these different little bits of snowflakes sort of rustling in the air. They give it a little spin, and then they kind of stick onto the roof of the tunnel. And as you do, you see this tiny little figure, almost like honestly, it's like Grimer from Pokemon, but in the form of snow.
My son.
And it's a little snowy. It's a little icy, like mud slick, essentially.
So, I'm assuming I'm looking through its eyes right now.
Yeah, as soon as it hits and you close your own eyes, you can now see through its eyes.
I'm gonna direct it to move along the roof towards the opening,
And
so I can not quite going in, but just basically as if it was standing in the doorway. So I can.
You have a moment of vertigo as you realize it is essentially hanging upside down, and you're looking through its eyes, and you can feel it sort of like as you're watching its eyesight wobbles a bit as you realize it's kind of like almost gelatiny in its consistency, even though it's a big snow creature or a little tiny snow creature, I should say. After a moment, you get sort of realigned, and the lighting beyond is this cool, gentle light. Let's see. The chamber is festooned with a thick carpet of vibrant green moss that slinks over rocky outcroppings, and a number of thick ferns and creeping vines provide dense vegetation in what looks to be a natural cave that has since been filled with a riotous bloom of vegetation. To either side of the tunnel, you can, through your elemental's ears, hear the faintest sound of falling water as it gently cascades down rocky shelves and into pools just out of your sight. Before you, a large stone bowl is filled with a placid water, and you can see some fireflies and dragonflies flitting over the surface in a kind of lazy dance as they dance around between. And then there's a whole bunch of reeds growing up along the outside that seem to be swaying just ever so gently in a non-existent breeze. And so looking through it, you almost have the feel like you're looking at like a beautiful pond or a lake, but you know that it is essentially underground.
And do I see any sign of snake people? Like,
if you're purposely going to be looking around through its eyes, give me a perception check, and I'll allow you to use your own perception. Well, yeah, I'll just use your own perception.
I mean, I don't have the stats for this, so you have to tell me what to roll.
Yeah. $14. Yeah, so your creature looks around the tunnel, and besides the fireflies and the dragonflies, doesn't see anything out of the ordinary.
Twid is sneaking down the tunnel towards Thorn.
If you're
I'm gonna
sneaking,
send
give me
it-
a stealth check.
I'm gonna send it like how far? Like if I was someone walking
Mhm.
in, how far would I need to go before I could like look to the left and the right and see stuff?
I would say at this point, just like another 10 feet. It's like another round's worth of movement.
I'm gonna make it go to
Okay,
10 feet.
so it slithers in, and the roof sort of slopes back up and starts to curve overhead with little stalactites and stalagmites hanging down, all kind of covered with this thick blanket of moss and lichen. As you slip into it, you can look around, and you can see like it is a sort of circular, large chamber. Everything is just green and verdant. Like everywhere the little creature looks, you just see some kind of like plant life. It's definitely the kind of plant life that grows in like more dank, wet, humid environments.
Twid got a 15 for stealth.
All right, so could you slip down the tunnel stealthily, or
You
so
see-
you think?
Yeah, you see Thorn just sort of crouched off to one side with a hand on their bow and their eyes closed. So now that the elemental's a little bit further in, still no people, no Sneeple.
You don't see the you do not see any signs of Sneeple.
I'm gonna. Do I just like? Can I dispel it? Does it fade on its own?
It after a minute it will fade on its own, or you can at any point just release it.
I'm gonna release it because I don't want any trace.
Yes. And so as you do, you feel it for a second as before your vision returns, just sort of like into a little tiny shower of quickly melting snowflake.
And then
Twid
Thorn
is
will
standing right next to you as you
open
open
their
your
eyes.
eyes.
Right. Thorn is gonna like go to whack you with the bow because they're startled, and then stop. I don't see anyone. And Thorn will begin to walk back the tunnel. Just, it looks to be empty.
Well, that's good.
My proposal is perhaps have the townsfolk wait in the tunnel while we go to the Barrow itself so they are not exposed. After all, we are still being hunted.
Yeah, it seems like a good idea to keep them a little bit
And
behind.
Thorn will describe
as
what
we-
they saw.
I feel like the minute you describe it, Valen, I'm just like, oh, that sounds so cool, and I just like take off into the Barrow, like not even like paying attention.
I'm gonna turn to Reese and just kind of explain that we're gonna go in and explore, and that they should hang out just inside the cave.
Calvin and Porkroll are going to stay at the entrance and be the last ones to go through the whole tunnel.
Okay.
Thorn's going to
So
follow
as-
after Valen so that they don't drown in a puddle.
Okay, so it's Thorn following Valen. Twid, I assume you're going with them. You're also following. You're staying to go the last, correct, Calvin?
Yeah, Twid will follow once they like get to the, because Twid didn't follow Thorn back. Twid will just go along with them as they start moving forward.
As you say that to Reese will go, oh, I'll let the others know to head up, and gives a little like whistle. And as they do, you see a tiny little what do you think to be like a little peregrine come flittering out of the trees to land on his gauntlet. And you can see him sort of lean into sort of whisper into its ears, and then it takes off to fly away.
We have someone who has a bit of experience with these Fey portals, but I can't say anything's going to be predictable once they get in there. So I think just be ready to move at a moment's notice if we need to. And
I'm assuming you all head in?
Yep.
Okay, so heading back into the tunnel, like I said, the tunnel is just this worn smooth in the middle stone, and then around it you can see that all the walls are starting to cover with like the creep of moss, and everything has that very like slightly wet, verdant feel to it, and you can smell like the rich loam as you step out into the tunnel itself, and then down through the entrance to this chamber. Looking around, you see much of what was described to you by Thorn. You can see that there are just thick ferns sort of all across the room, many of them growing to like near like titanic proportions for a fern. So some of them are almost like human height with these huge draping tendrils. And then there are vines sort of crawling up the sides onto a lot of the stalagmites or stalactites overhead and like curling and hanging down. Very much like praying hands plants, essentially. So big, thick green leaves hanging down, giving the whole thing a very like forest cavern feel to it. And then in front of you is this pool. It's not gigantic. It's probably about, you'd guess, like 25 feet all the way around. It comes up against the back wall where it just meets the wall in stone. And there's, like I said, little fireflies and dragonflies sort of swirling around inside of it as the reeds sway as though they're caught in the breeze.
So, 2 questions. 1, how much does this remind Valen of home? And am I like, aww, like this is, I like this.
I will say the aura of it is very like calming, and it definitely reminds you of home.
And then does the pool remind me of like what I remember? I like specifically the pool. Am I like, oh yeah, this like checks out like fake?
Be a quick
portal.
investigation check as you're walking up to it.
Porkroll wants to find a fern that he can bat at that'll like move and be fun to keep doing it.
Oh, that's not a problem at all. There's tons of ferns in here, so Porkroll easily finds one to just like pat, and it like shakes, and then he just
I got an 8.
8. So you look around, and like I will say, the one thing that does jump out to you, even with just your passive, but especially actively looking, is that this pool doesn't seem to have any crystals around it. And the last time you were at one of the Fae pools, they had these beautiful, like crystalline stalagmites essentially growing around the pool. And the ones that you saw were carved. So they were carved into like different shapes. But you've also heard about ones that were just raw crystal. It's a side effect of like the whole process of all the magic running through it. This pool does not have that.
I don't think this is the portal, everyone. Like, there should be crystals somewhere around here if this is the portal. And I'm gonna like kind of like be wandering like in the general vicinity, like looking for crystals, but like very clearly not finding them.
Remind me, there's waterfalls in here?
If you look to either wall, you can see that there's a section where this wall is kind of rocky and stony, and there's just a steady stream of very gentle water sort of lapping down. Very like natural springs running out of the stone. So there's no violent sound of water falling. There's just that light like...
So
light,
not heavy enough that it could be obscuring a secret room.
No, you can clearly see the rock under each of the falls.
Can I look around for any like carved runes or inscriptions?
Yeah, so if you want to give me an investigation check as you look around.
Can I do one for like vines covering a second tunnel or like a hidden pool or like anything like that?
Yeah, feel free
Like
to
looking
give me
for
an
a way to go
investigation check
further.
as you investigate the walls.
25 investigation.
25 investigation?
I got a 7.
So you spend a little time looking around for any signs of runes or sigils. I'll say after a moment you realize that there is the remains of what was probably once a mosaic on the back wall on the other side of the pool. It's starting to be covered a little bit here and there where the plant life has started to grow over it, but it is this very beautiful representation of what you believe to be like an idealized depiction of the seasons. And they sort of flow one into the other, and the season that's right in the center is this beautiful depiction of spring that's just larger than the others.
Can Flip moves into the room, and I want to do like a check just to see if basically have a vague idea that, you know, we're in a Fey portal, something might be illusioned. So just like a general, I don't know if it's perception or investigation to like...
Investigation, yeah, just to look around.
Okay. Uh, 5.
I would say you all spend some time looking around, and it's Calvin of all of you that walks by the pool itself. And Calvin, as you look down, you look at your reflection, you can see that it looks very different from the reflection that you're used to. So where all of the like smears and stains from oil and all of your different projects have kind of like covered your clothes, and you have even like a little smudge on your cheek. Looking down in the pool, you're perfectly clean, well kept. Your hair is carefully coiffed, and you're wearing what would you think like nice like noble's version. In Calvin's mind, what Calvin thinks of as like a fancy attire is what Calvin is wearing. And at the moment that you're looking down into the pool, you see several little fae come flittering in from the sides in the reflection and start to put little tiny pieces of plant life. So like little bits of fern and moss are into like a little crown around your head and start putting flowers into it.
Into actual Calvin's hair or reflection Calvin's hair?
So you look down, you see that, you look around you, and there's nothing near you. Like you go to touch your head, and there's nothing on your head. It's just the
I
reflection.
want to grab Twid and pull him next to me and like push his face over the pool.
You grab Twid and sort of hang Twid over the pool, and they like look down into it. And what you can see actually, Twid, for yours is you see Selwyn in so the visual of Selwyn that's in your mind of what they would look like if they were not made as a doll, like sort of what your basis of what Selwyn was going, almost like they're alive, and they're doing the same thing. They're making a little.
You froze.
Yeah, I was like, wait. Please hold.
Please hold while we find our DM.
Oh no, the Fae got him.
They're lost in the ether.
That's what he gets for trying to describe what the Fae were up to. They didn't like that.
It's just you in Discord too. It's not like the stream. It's you in Discord. Oh. Well, I guess this is why we got you a new computer.
What's wrong?
His whole computer is borked and frozen.
Oh, fun.
Wait, the new one or his old one?
No, he's still on the old one.
There we go. He's back.
Because he didn't like the webcam setup on the new one, so we had to tinker with it a little bit more.
I'm back now?
Yeah!
Yes. Okay, good. Good. Sorry about that, everybody. Computer problems. Yay, not Fae magic.
Twid looks like Selwyn. Do I see Selwyn or do I see Twid?
So when you look down, you can see yourself still looking nice with the fairies still like trying to weave it into your hair. When you look at Twid, you don't see anything.
Oh.
So you don't see any reflection of Twid. But Twid, you see yourself with Selwyn trying to make you a little flower crown.
Oh, thank you, Sel. Wait.
Can I?
This is definitely some kind of portal. Because this is weird.
Can you pull me back now, Calvin, and stop holding me over the water?
I will pull Twid back.
You pull Twid back up away from the water.
This is a Zach question, not a Valen question, because I know we talked about this before. Do the Fae and Obra, do they follow the 4 seasons? Is that how they're like?
So the Fae that you know the best are the summer and the spring court, because they live more often in the wheel.
These are spring, based on the mosaic.
Yeah, that's what. So yeah, so Zach asked so that would Valen be like, oh wait a second, like things would connect if people pointed them out to Valen.
Yeah, so when somebody points out that there is that mosaic there and that spring is dominant, and sort of looking around how green and verdant the life is, this feels like when you went to the summer court, when you went to the spring court. So a lot of their architecture was built like it was stone and wood and things like that, but almost everywhere they were growing plants like out of whatever they had built. So like you would go into someone's house and like open the door and the walls were growing like plants, very like the like urban agriculture where things are just hanging on the walls.
Twid is going to start wandering around looking for supplies to make a flower crown.
Seeing the commotion with Calvin and Twid, I think Flip is gonna walk up and look in the water and probably just gonna not be able to help himself and reach out to touch the water.
So Twid, or I should say Flip, as you look down into the pool, what you see is kind of different from Calvin and Twid. So instead of seeing yourself, what you see is this A humanoid man from just general appearance, like more slightly more masculine in their garb, but fairly androgynous, very sharp featured, like very much in what would be like a knightly suit. With this long almost white blonde hair pushed back by a little coronet. And they too are having little flowers put into their hair, but everything about them is very much like they have that regal bearing, and you can see they have these long ears that are sort of curved back and upwards, very exaggerated compared to Thorns, who's only like a little bit. Any of the elves you've met have always had points, but smaller. These are super exaggerated. And then there is a spatter of green, almost like paint, that goes across their pale face. And what's most noticeable is their white eyes are a solid white, except for where the little spatters of green break up their iris.
I have to say that as a player, Bandit is very much wanting to run away, but I feel like Flip touching some magical water is very much what he wants to do.
So you reach down and you touch the water, and the water is like crisp and cool in your hands. It is very much like a mountain spring, and you see the little ripples start to settle on the pool. And as you do, you're not sure how you know this because their eyes are so strange and don't have like a clear iris and pupil. But you get the feeling like whatever the reflection takes that moment to look back at you, and like tilts its head a little bit, and you can see several of the fae that are fluttering around its head zip back behind, little pixies basically zip back behind its head and sort of peek out at you from amongst the flowers.
Bandit, haven't we learned not to touch magic water for you before?
Like, have you learned your lesson?
If Valen saw this, if Valen saw this, would Valen be like, you shouldn't touch the water?
Did you look at the pool, Valen?
I would say, like, by this point, I've started to connect the dots. I was like, wait, the spring motif, the room, I saw Calvin's commotion, so I think I was going to wander over too, but I'm assuming as I'm wandering over, that's when I would see Flip.
Yeah,
I was going to say, hey, do you want to try to talk to the pixies in the water?
So as I walk up...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, as I walk up, would I be like, you shouldn't touch it? Or would I just be like, would that not, like, cross my mind?
I don't think you'd have a specific reason to tell them not to touch it, having not seen anything yourself.
Okay.
When I noticed the Fae looking back at me, that's when I think more the survival instinct would kick in, and that's when I yank my hand back and be like, whoa, okay, well, whatever's in there can definitely see us when we touch the water, so
you snap your hand back, and as it looks up at you, you can see the reflection sort of quirks its eyebrow. And then after a moment, like, giving you a look up and down, turns back to the rest of the Fae and, like, waves them to continue, and they continue to set about building this crown on its head. Kind of like, you definitely get the vibe of, like, you have been dismissed from its mind.
Are you good, Flip? What did you see? What's going on? And I'll kind of start to look into the pool.
First of all, Flip, whatever is in there is a being. It is whomever. I don't think it is wise to insult the person who may be our key to getting home.
Of course. You're right, Thorn. Thanks for catching me.
Valen, as you lean over and look down into the pool while Thorn and Flip are talking, what you see is just yourself staring back at you. And as you look down, though, the version of you smiles. And it's a smile that you are not familiar with seeing yourself in a mirror or reflection before. It is mischievous. Like, normally Valen doesn't have that drive to, like, play pranks or do tricks, but this has that bit of that feel, and it just kind of goes and gives you a little wave back.
I feel like I give it a confused wave, like, hi.
And as you're doing that, you can see it kind of like looks down as though it's looking at the edge of the pool, and it reaches down and plucks up what looks to be like a dandelion, and just kind of goes. And as it does, the dandelion blows out, and it starts to, in midair, turn into a bunch of different flowers that create like this beautiful, like almost rippling rainbow effect of flowers for a second before they fade. And then it looks back at you and gives you a little wink, and then disappears, and you are looking now down at the water with no reflection.
I think this might actually be the way out. As I point to the water, I got a good feeling about this.
Twid, while you have been looking around, you find, having like had a moment to look at what Selwyn was putting together in the reflection, you find a lot of the little bit of mosses and the fern you were seeing that they were using to build the crowns. You see them here. As for the flowers, you don't see any colorful flowers growing down here. If you want to give me let's just say like a wisdom check. And I can say anybody who has seen the crowns now or seen a vision, if they want to, can give me a wisdom check too.
Anybody but me.
Anybody but Thorn.
6.
Oh, and technically Valen, because Valen didn't see the crowns.
Twid got a 6.
Which is a shame because
So
I
the
had a
two
really good
wise
roll.
ones.
14.
Sorry.
Yeah.
14?
6.
6. So the 2 6s, you don't think anything of it. I would say you, Flip, are a little disturbed because you haven't had this experience. You spent a ton of time around water, and you're used to some of the like magical ways it's used in the Shadowcar Islands, but like you've never had the experience of it being like a strange mirror, but not. And then Twid, you find like the bits and pieces. You're like, oh, this is the right fern. Here's some of the like reeds that are the right thing that I need. And ooh, this moss is the right color. I don't like this color. This is the right color. But Calvin, I will say, noticing it, you noticed in that flash where you saw the crown being built, it was mostly made of the white flowers that you saw hanging on that archway. And then there were several purple and blue flowers that you remember seeing in the fields on your way in.
I'm gonna grab. What was quirky alchemist's name? Cassian. What I have Cassian written down. That wasn't her name.
Amalia.
Amalia.
Amalia. I'm gonna grab Amalia.
From the tunnel?
Oh, well, I assume they all came in with us because
They're in the they're in the tunnel just
waiting
behind
in the
you.
tunnel outside.
So Calvin is gonna like tap Porkroll on the shoulder, and Porkroll's gonna come along, and we're gonna find Amalia, and I'm gonna be like, Amalia, can you help me get some flowers? I think we might need them.
And like Amalia looks up at you from where she sort of had her arms buried in one of the sacks that she has, and she sort of, you can hear her like wrestling around inside, and she looks up and like kind of blinks for a second, and she looks around, closes it up, and is like, oh, of course. What can I help you find?
There were purple and blue and white flowers out front, and we're gonna need a bunch of them. We need like all of them for everybody.
Well, like, do you know what they were specifically?
There were some on the archway and then some in the fields.
I can do that. And you see she picks up what you'd think to be like a herbalist's kit from amongst her stuff, and sort of swings it over her shoulder. She leaves the other packs there with the rest of the group, and she and Reese go step out onto the outside to go look for them. And I'll say, like, just to keep it simple, about 10 minutes pass, and she returns and hands you a bushel each, like a small bouquet of each of the 3 types of flowers that you mentioned to her.
Okay, Twid.
She goes, oh, do be careful with the purple one, though. You don't want to consume that one.
Twid, you're a weaver.
I am.
And I have leatherworking skills, which is, I think, applicable potentially, maybe. Also, Tinkerer's tools. Can we just make a whole bunch of fairy crowns?
Yes. So if you want to make a weaver's kit, and I will say, Calvin, if you want to make a tinkerer's check,
What?
dexterity for both.
Okay.
Yeah. As you try to recreate some fairy crowns.
Got a 12.
With guidance for both, as clearly I'm seeing you all make an effort doing something, so I'm going to give you guidance as you're working, if I can.
Yeah.
A 14.
You have to pick one, because guidance is a concentration spell.
Fair.
I also have guidance.
Calvin.
Okay.
Can both
Well,
do
if
it.
both of you guidance, then I will say you can give guidance to each of them. Did you roll with your guidance, Calvin?
14.
Insert math meme over Tay.
Also 14.
Also 14? Okay, so with the 14s, it takes you a little while, but you manage to make up crowns that you think you're fairly certain match the ones that you saw before. There's a moment or two where like you go to pick one of them up and like the flower sort of just like sadly leans over and you have to like fix it, but you get to where you want to be. So at the end you have enough crowns for everybody who's just in the room, or did you want to do for the entire...
All the villagers.
All the villagers. Okay, so this ended up taking you probably about 20 minutes to a half hour to make enough for everybody.
While they're having arts and crafts time, Thorn would sort of walk over to, shoulder to shoulder Val and go, "Have you tried talking with them?"
I have a moment where I'm like, with who?
The fairies that everyone but me has seen.
I mean, I didn't see any fairies when I looked in the pool. I saw me. Well, like, it wasn't me, but it was me. But like, then they disappeared, so I didn't really get to talk to anyone.
So you did see a fairy in the pool, but
Oh!
Ooh, sick burn.
I think I'll ask Flip though. Like, what did you see specifically? Because like, you had I would have seen you having a much bigger reaction than I did.
Yeah, I'll describe the fae that I saw in pretty apt detail.
I'm
If
assuming
you
I
give
would.
Eye for detail.
If you give me good detail, give me Valen a nature check.
Not good. 5.
No, doesn't ring any bells to you. Like I would say that the Flip describing it as looking very like elven or human in the stature and stuff like that. Lets you know that it's probably one of the like court fae who tend to be more powerful, but like you don't know anything specific about them off the top of your head.
Yeah, I recognize them as being important, but I'm like, I don't think I met that one.
Yeah.
I'm curious now. Thorn's gonna lean over into the pool and see if they can see anybody.
You go over to the pool and you look down into it, and you see yourself staring back.
Like, no change, just me?
No change, just you. And you like look at yourself for a minute, sort of look into the pool, looking for some other sign of something different that the others saw. And I'll say after about a minute of you staring and looking around, you stop and look back at yourself for a moment and realize that something seems off. And it is that the blue coloration to your skin is slowly turning a soft green.
Thorn on the back go, not a bad look for me. Valen, would you mind maybe try just calling out that we would like to speak with them? I can see something.
I will go back over and like lean over the pool, and I was trying to think like, how would you address like a court fae? Like what if you don't know who they are? Is there like a generic title? I could be like, oh,
My failiness.
my liege.
You would know fae. They respond to like if they're a lord or a lady of the court, they would respond to lady, lord, or lady. But most also would just respond to being like called a fae being.
I will lean over.
Oh, or if it's the spring court, the bloom of spring is also an appropriate title.
Ooh, I like that one. I'll kind of lean over. I'm assuming. Do I still see nothing like the second time I lean over? Or is
yeah, looking back down, you don't see anything. It's just like a placid surface of water, no you reflected in it.
I'll like purposely like kind of get like a little too close to the water, like I'm trying to like yell through it, and I'll just be like, excuse me, bloom of spring. I don't know if you're in there anymore, but we kind of need to get through. There's a bunch of like really bad people chasing after us, and like we could just like we'll be like a second. We're just gonna pop through, and then we'll be done, and like we won't bother you anymore.
As you're saying that, what you see, and it's like it's a little bit weird moment for you because as you're looking down into the reflection of the pool, what you see is after a second, it looks like one of the flower crowns that everyone else was describing surfaces out of the water, but it's in reverse, as though it is surfacing from the inside of the pool, on the inside of the pool.
Does it break the surface, or is it like right under the surface?
You are looking down at a flat surface, and it looks like it came out from the horizon of the pool, but in reverse, like it was going down.
Oh, gotcha. So like it was going away from us.
Yeah. Like the perspective would be like as if you threw it into the pool and it landed and then slowly sank in.
Did I see that too?
No, it's just Valen.
I'll turn to you, Thorn, since I'm assuming you're right next to me. And I'm like, well, I didn't see anyone, but I saw a flower crown just kind of sinking down. So those are probably a good idea.
Yeah, I believe they're on the right track. And Thorn will get up and...
Whenever we finish the flower crowns, if Valen described what just happened, I think Calvin's just going to dive into the pool.
Like wearing a flower crown?
Yeah.
You know that we need a ritual to get through, right? This is like Joey to Chase.
Who says that making the flower crowns wasn't the ritual?
You put the flower crown onto your head, and you, Calvin, goes to the edge of the pool and just hops in. As you do, it is you hit the water and you feel that rush of cold, but you realize you're not wet after a second. And as you are hitting it, you are going down, and then suddenly the perspective on you changes, and you instead feel as though you're being pulled. What used to be your ceiling is now up. And after a second, you realize that you are laying on the top of the pool, but what you would have expected to be face down. It's that horrible vertigo moment of your entire expectation flipping.
But am I underwater?
Yeah, you dove, you broke the surface of the water, but now you are no longer underwater, you are on top of water.
So,
Can we see him?
It's that at World's End moment where the pirate ship goes down and then comes back up and then
it is that at World's End moment where it's up is down and down is up.
If I sit up, am I
You're dead.
In a different world?
If you sit up, you look around. The pool is similar, but everything about it is just the colors are more vibrant. The lights float. What were fireflies and little dragonflies floating in the air before are little fairy lights. They're about that big in a bunch of different colors, and they're sort of little motes wisping around in the air. The walls have that effect of light glowing through water. So you see the little the after image of all the different water shimmering on the walls. And as you look around, you can see that rather than the mural behind you before it showed spring, there's an archway that leads into the rest of further into the Barrow, essentially.
Ah, okay. Calvin's gonna start going through the archway.
I will say, everybody looking in now, because Calvin has jumped in, you can see Calvin from your perspective inverted, walking across the bottom of the pond, walking across the flat surface of the pond towards what looks to be an archway now. You're reflected in the pool, but not present on the wall.
How many times have we talked with him, but not going alone? And Thorn's going to shout back, "Okay, we're going!"
Twitter's going to put on a crown and go, "Cannonball!" and jump in.
Oh yeah, Valen. The minute they saw it work, Valen.
Yeah, Thorn's just
running to the end, jumps, pulls their little legs up, does a cannonball, goes flying into the pond. As they hit the surface, no water sprays up. You simply see Twid pass through. As for Twid, for your experience, you are going down until suddenly, oh no, you are not going down. You're now going up. And then you feel the pull of gravity go the other direction, and you kind of, you don't slam, but you thump pretty heavily on your shoulders and your head on the bottom side of the pool.
While they're all jumping in, Thorn is going to be passing out crowns to the villagers and, saying, "We're going to do this so we don't all get separated because I'm not sure if it works in reverse."
The little girl puts her flower crown on and looks over to you and goes, "Is this like fairy magic?"
It is quite literally fairy magic.
I'm a little nervous. Will you hold my hand?
Of course.
And she takes your hand. And then the little boy steps up and holds his hand up but doesn't say anything.
Thorn will first put a crown on their head and then walk the two of them into the barrow.
Your experience, since you are walking more slowly, is that you step onto the surface of the pond and you are sinking into it until a certain point you are coming back out of the other side.
Thorn will look down at them. "See, Nothing too terrible.
And the rest of the villagers sort of follow you fairly quickly. Reese, after a moment, reappears next to you, Bo down on his side, but looking around kind of wild eyes. And his sister has this, for the first time, because every time you've seen her before now, she's been very stressed and looked very unhappy. For the first time you see her, she has this huge smile on her face as she looks around and she goes, "This is just like our grandfather's stories. Although he never told us about the pool."
If I have a hunch. I do believe that the fairies were never driven from this place. They merely made it seem like they were quite clever, really.
And
But I
Reese
do
looks
believe
around.
this might prevent us from being followed for the time being.
Reese looks around and goes, "I guess you might be right. If they used some kind of illusion magic, they may have convinced the soldiers from Rion that they were dead, but they've just been here the entire time. That would explain why our grandfather told everyone to stay away from here, too."
He may have known it wasn't true. Calvin went ahead. We should stick together.
Oh, of course. Let me just get the last. And you see, like, Amalia comes through on the other side. And, like, as she's looking around, she's like, "Well, I'll be. This is pretty impressive." And she goes, "What happens if I..." And she started to take the crown off. And as it leaves her head, you see her feet start to sink back into the pool. And she's like, no, bad idea. She goes, "I'll stay in this time. Thank you."
I was gonna say I was gonna wait for everyone. Hopefully, yeah, heading in after Amalia.
Yeah, so as you step into the pool, you start to sink in as well. For a quick second, looking down into the pool, you see the same figure that you saw before, dressed in, one of those doublets that's the whole front kind of comes over in an elaborate cross and is buttoned down the sides. Rapier at their wrists, gloves pulled up onto their hands, with that same like spatter of green paint across their face and like little flecks of it across their eyes. And they look at you and give you the up and down again once more before fading out. And then you are reappearing at the side of the pool with everybody else.
So, you might be frozen, Evan. Oh, there we go. Nope.
Yeah, that was just a little hiccup for a second. As you look around, you see what everyone else saw. That this is, I will say, like the flip is almost like this is the nighttime version of the pool. Everything has that grotto feel to it, where like the lighting is more subdued in mood. Besides all the little fairy lights flying through the airs, all the plants seem just a little bit bigger and a little bit more overshadowing. And then the archway is not dissimilar to the one at the front of the Barrow. This one is also the like large vine sort of wrapped around with the little tiny white flowers all throughout it.
I'm assuming I like the minute I got through, I kind of like went off and not like a run, but like a little bit of like a moving a little quicker, like towards the archway, because I was like, oh, okay, I get this now. Like this is like what I'm used to like dealing with, kind of.
Yeah. And the water is a little weird to run on because it gives just the littlest bit under your feet. And you realize that the water is sort of rippling very slowly from with somebody disturbing it as you like head off across it towards the archway. And I'll say, Calvin, you beat everybody else to the archway. As you get to the archway itself and look through it, you see what looks to be a large room, very nicely appointed and well decorated. It is a thick carpet rolling away from you that has the patterning almost as though it's like someone has showered leaves across the floor, but picked out into the carpet. Very like a like thick, heavy pile. There are well-made bits of wooden and metal furniture, all with like the color of brass or copper, spread throughout the room. Is very much like a gentleman or gentlewoman's like summer cottage feel to it. You can even see that there's windows in several of the walls that look out on what to be like a rolling meadow. And the only thing that's unusual about it is that most of the furniture has a like heavily
I can see Chase and Joey.
Can y'all see me?
I can see you and Chase moving. I can now see Evan moving. Bandit and Tay are still frozen on mine.
Same.
My suggestion is we use this as our quick break.
Not a
It
bad
is
idea.
8:30. The internet is telling us it's time for us to take a break. We're going to grab a quick 5-minute break so that everyone feel free to get up, stretch your legs, get yourself some water, and you'll be joining us in the Barrow in just a few minutes. See you there.